The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky here, and welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. Today, I have Almira Bardai join us. Almira, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Very exciting. Always exciting.
There we go. It's a great attitude to have. Good mindset, right? Positive. So for those who aren't familiar with you and your work, you are in PR, thought leadership, communications. You've been running your own consulting business since, I believe, April of 2018.
Yes.
Working with clients like Nike, Best Buy, TELUS, Virgin Radio, and many others.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get right into it. Your career. What were you doing before you started your consulting business in 2018?
Yeah. I was working I went to SFU, and I often talk about this because I chose Simon Fraser University because of their co-op program. So I had some phenomenal experience even actually before I graduated, which is why I've been in the industry for so long. I like to pretend that I'm younger than I am. But then I actually worked for the government for a bit. I extended some of my co-ops, and then I actually worked for the government and then worked for a PR agency. I worked for Wilcox PR, which is very specialized in consumer good PR, but also in crisis PR. So I really cut my teeth in crisis PR. And then I moved to the UK and I ended up becoming head of global PR for a beer company out there. It was great, Cobra Beer, and it was a niche beer brand. An amazing time to be doing that. And then traveled and worked abroad. So I've worked in the UK, Australia, South Africa, and then came back to Vancouver and started establishing consultancies, freelancing, which grew into an agency.
Well, we're going to get into all that. So take me back though to that day in, I guess, 2018, or maybe it even started to kind of swirl around in your mind years before. But what made you decide to start your own consulting business after being in the corporate landscape, living, traveling, working all around the world? Why come back to North America, specifically Vancouver, and then start your own consulting business?
I actually couldn't find a job. And so a lot of people say that about when they've been abroad. And I'd like to think times have changed. I mean, we're talking about 2018, this was 2008, actually. So I went back into consulting in 2018 after I sold my business. But I actually was in the UK. And I always say how the UK, it's ultimate possibilities. You can do so much. And I think partially their population is bigger. It's the center of the world to a certain degree. And you can really do anything. And so I was abroad for about 7 years. And then I came back to Canada because I wanted just to spend a little bit of time with family. And also I'd been in Australia and really loved it. So I was looking to make a permanent transition, just kind of needed a base. But when I came back here, nobody would hire me because they said I've been gone for so long. Whereas the attitude in the UK, and particularly in Australia, given my experience, I became head of global PR for the beer company I worked for. I was sellable within minutes. I couldn't keep up with all the phone calls from the recruiters and everything, but I came back here. And I think Canada is an amazing place, but it's not always so open-minded to foreign experience. So I really had to start at the beginning. And I was very lucky that somebody had suggested that I go onto Craigslist and look for clients. But I even did things like mystery shopping at Rogers Video, not the phone store, it was the video store back then, just to be able to get cash in. And so one thing led to another that I ended up consulting and really fell into it. It was not my initial plan. It was to go back into the corporate world to be able to then apply for my passport to move back to Australia because I'd been in Australia. But just by virtue of the market, I couldn't even get a job. So I started to fall into consulting.
So this was after you sold your agency business?
This was before.
Before. Okay.
So what happened was that I ended up trying to get my passport to Australia, but it's so funny how your age and the world works. But anyways, I turned 30, so I didn't have enough points to get my own passport. But that's when the beauty of consulting was there, that I was like, I don't need to have a passport or to work for somebody. I'm a Commonwealth citizen. I can move to Australia for 6 months and just run my business. And that's exactly what I did. And really at a young age, started to get that feel for being your own boss, consulting, working from abroad, all the things that are so trendy now, if you will. I did that at a very young age.
Yeah.
I did that and I ran my business from Australia and then decided, okay, I'm going to incorporate and I would like this to be what my life is. But funny enough, came back to Vancouver towards middle of 2008 and ended up meeting my future business partner. And that's when we set up our agency in 2009 that I subsequently sold to her in 2018. And again, 2018 went back into consulting. So it's kind of been like the thing I go back to.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really fascinating. I had a very similar experience where I started businesses from a young age. And I remember when I went over to Japan and opened up a branch office for our consulting business over there, it was exactly like what you said, like the grass was greener. So if I would have tried to do what I was doing at that time with my cousin business partner, Sam, we had it in North America. It was going well, but kind of by virtue of going to Japan, all of a sudden we had an advantage, right? Mm-hmm. Which was that we weren't trying to help Japanese companies to sell more to Japanese consumers or businesses. We were helping Japanese global organizations to sell more effectively to English speaking markets. So, always kind of recommending, suggesting to consultants, look at what advantage do you have? Because there's likely something that you're not focusing on. And it didn't matter that I was significantly younger. I mean, I was in my early 20s, surrounded by people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, in some cases even 70s. But you could look at that and go, oh, I'm younger, don't have as much experience or expertise. But actually, what I was bringing to the table was a fresh kind of new perspective. So that's really what we marketed. I want to ask you, so I really want to get into the consulting business that you started in 2018, but I'm very interested in the agency as well. You mentioned that you started that with a partner. You grew that. Can you talk a little bit about the experience of growing the agency with a partner, and then ultimately why did you decide to sell your shares or in the business and go off on your own?
Yeah. So my business partner and I, Lindsay, actually were really great friends, and we just kind of met through the industry in Vancouver, and she had a very similar experience to me. And so she was in the UK. Funny enough, we're like soul sisters that have always followed each other. So she was in the UK, I was in the UK. I went to Australia, she went to India. And keeping in mind, she's blonde hair, blue eyed, and she was a Bollywood producer, which is great. I love telling that story. But when she came back to Vancouver, she actually couldn't find a job either. And so because she had the experience to freelance in movie, film, and entertainment PR, she ended up consulting. And so we got to be friends and she did was very film-based. I was doing consumer and a lot of green tech actually at the time, right when it started. And it came to the point that the Vancouver market is so small that I felt like we'd start to compete. And it was like, well, why compete? Why don't we just team up? And so that was the idea that we had in December of 2008. And her company was called Jigsaw PR. Mine was Avid PR. So I just had the idea of the name being Jive PR. And you're going to love this, is that we then had a journalist who subsequently said that, Jive talk in the 70s was African-American talk. The word was bullshit. So if you said Jive talk, it was bullshit talk. And we were like, oh my gosh, we've named our PR agency Bullshit PR, right? But they were like, okay, it's PR. So some people do think it's the spin. So we thought it ended up being brand appropriate. But we ended up founding the agency together, that we were running our own consultancies. We decided to merge the two consultancies to form Jive, but we still needed to feel it out. We weren't sure if it would be successful. I mean, this was 2000. Well, the markets crashed in 2008 and you're starting to move into the recession. So we wanted to be prudent about it. And would our friendship survive? Would we be good business partners? But it came out of the fact that she loved to do business development and I love to run the business and work with the clients. So you start to look at how you can work together and how you complement each other. So we decided that any existing business that we had, we would keep in our own consultancies, and any new business we would put into Jive so that we could feel our way through it. Mm-hmm. And it exploded. And by the time, we had the decision to merge was for February 2009, but we said, we're going to give it to September and see what happens. It was great. So by September, we're both so tired of trying to do both. We said, let's just actually officially merge. And so we did that. And it was great. And I also believe we were successful because there was the two of us. As an entrepreneur, there's always the push-pull, business development and running the business, the ops, right? And so there's the two of us to do it. And I do believe that's why we were super successful with it. And ultimately, we ended up scaling the agency to 3 offices, Vancouver, Toronto, and Los Angeles. So going into the US made sense, especially because we did film and entertainment PR. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, went from a traditional PR agency, adding in social media services, influencer marketing, brand, and just really grew it to, I think it was 30 people by the time that I sold to her in 2018. So, yeah.
What were the reasons for selling?
And it's funny because I often say that I believe every entrepreneur knows how long they want to have a business for. I do feel like it's like maybe 90% of the truth. I believe that we ultimately have the vision for how long we want to have a business and for what we want it to be. Maybe it's just my truth, but I knew I just wanted to do this for 10 years. And for me, it was becoming, I guess a lot of it was the same. And I wanted some new challenges. And don't get me wrong, I love my team. I love being a part of the success. But the other thing, what I love is the growing, setting up, scaling. I don't love the maintenance of it. And, you're the best entrepreneur or the best business owner at a certain stage of business. For me, I didn't want to keep maintaining it. I knew we needed better technology. I knew we needed better systems. As you grow, just like a child, you go from babyhood to toddler to adolescent.
Sure.
As we got into that adolescent, I knew that it needed more than what I wanted to give or where my passions lied. So it was a natural transition for me after 10 years.
And so looking back, kind of with the benefit of hindsight on that experience of coming together with a partner, merging a business, or even just kind of growing a business together, is there anything that you would recommend to a consultant in a similar situation? If they're right now thinking about, should I get involved with a partner? Should I try and do this myself? Of course, everyone's situation is different. There's no one way to do it, but are there any kind of like, hey, make sure that you look out for this, or have a partnership agreement, or like, are there any best practices that you would highly recommend to people who might be considering partnering?
Yeah, we actually got the best advice that I still talk about. Was the best business advice I ever had. We had a lawyer putting together a partnership agreement, and he said, negotiate the divorce as you negotiate the marriage. And so the two of us, as we wrote what each of us was bringing to the table, because we'd write it down, these are the clients we're bringing to the table. This is how much money we both put in the same amount of money. We'd also set up our business as a partnership of our two corporations so that we could put our own personal expenses through our own business, so there would never be an argument about any expenses going through the joint business, right? But we also decided what would happen in the case of whatever scenarios it might be. I mean, it was not a hugely extensive list of scenarios, but one of them was about if one of us wanted out, what would happen? Who would get which clients? These were my original clients that I brought into the business, because I'd actually had Granville Island Brewing, for example. And, I'd spent so many years in the beer industry, love the beer industry. So that'd be a client that I would keep, and what would be the clients that she would keep. Right. So it was very clear. And Lindsay and I were not best friends before we set up the business. And I think that was a really nice thing, because in life, we tend to have expectations of our best friends. So her and I didn't have expectations of, and also we didn't let friendship come into it. We definitely, like any business partners, we had issues, but not a lot. And if we did, we actually discussed it over email, because it would take the emotion out of it, right? That you could just have a very neutral conversation. And honestly, maybe it'd be about 10 times that we would just end up having these conversations throughout our 10 years of business. But knowing what it is that each of us wanted, if the business didn't work or there was an exit, allowed it to be so much smoother. And ultimately, we kept to that when we did dissolve the business. Although, you know what, I'm like, here's the clients, And I think one of the things that when you do a business exit is that you need to know what your goal is. And I know that my lawyer was like, what is it that you want from a dollar perspective? And for me, it wasn't about the money. I mean, the money's great, don't get me wrong. But for me, the exit was about the freedom to do the next things. And so what is it that would allow me to do the next thing? Because I'd actually found another buyer that Lindsay didn't want to sell to, because she didn't want to work for somebody else. That exit would have been much more lucrative from a money perspective, but I would have had to do an earn out for 2 years.
Right.
So if freedom is my goal, then which buyer am I selling to? And what is it that's going to fulfill my desire to be able to go on to the next chapter of my life? And so for me, it was actually selling to Lindsay, because I was done in 6 weeks, and then consulted back on a few key clients. So I think that's also part of the process as you do an exit, is that what's your ultimate goal that you want out of this, and being able to be very, very clear.
Yeah. No, that's I think very solid advice. So when you sold your shares, did you start the consulting business right away? Did you take some time off? Like, how quickly was that?
Yeah, I'd actually lined up the sale to be when I had my son. And so I had my son when I was 40 years old, and it was great. I mean, motherhood and entrepreneurship, or any type of parenthood and entrepreneurship, is a whole other ballgame, right? And for me, I love that I had the freedom of my 30s to be able to build the business. I could do whatever I needed to, and it was wonderful. But I knew that I wanted to spend time with this baby. And so I literally lined it up to be like, my due date is February 19th. What day am I done? And I actually had some clients that I actually onboarded about 6 weeks after I had my son for my own business, which I realize is completely crazy. But I started to build up my consulting during that time, and was also consulting back to Jive on some of our clients. And then just started to add more and more clients throughout the time as I had my son. So mine was more based on the lifestyle decision. And now he's older. I mean, he's 4. So just adding more and more clients as I go through. Yeah.
It sounds like your first clients when you started your consulting business came from prior relationships and clients you had at the agency that you sold your shares of. How about over the last 4 or so years? Is there any marketing that you've done for your own business that you've found has not worked that well?
Yeah. It's funny, when Lindsay and I first started the business, I really wanted to be on like the pitch list, as I called them. We all want to get big brands, right? We all want to be called in that pitch room. But I had to get really clear on how we actually got our business. And I think that was something that I've carried through into my own consulting is that it's all about relationships. And so for me, I actually don't do any marketing now. I'll post on LinkedIn to be a thought leader about business, especially women in business. That's something that's very precious and it's so dear to my heart. And I want to be an advocate for women in business and women in leadership. But for me, it's actually all been referral based. So that's something that I took from my previous business about how you build those relationships. And I still have clients coming back to me from years ago or clients I worked on a project before who are now at a new place of business will reach out to me. I'm blessed, knock on wood, that I've got a really great reputation and I'm known for what I do. So I do have the clients who are coming into me or just refer me because they're like, you have to talk to Almira. This is what she does, or she can help your business or your brand.
And when you say that referrals and relationships are key, what specifically are you doing? What do you find is most impactful? I mean, most people, they say referrals and they just it means like being passive, sitting back, people reach out to them. It's great while it comes. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to always come, but other people are more intentional in their strategy around referrals. They know there's specific things they need to do on a regular basis or pay attention to. Where do you sit on that kind of passive versus active referrals? And if it is more active, what specifically are you doing that you would recommend others do?
Yeah. Funny enough, I think mine are more passive in the sense that I actually, when I trace back all of the clients that I've got, actually haven't done anything to get them, which is a really nice place to be in. It's literally because, so for example, one of my clients, he actually was the VP at a digital agency that's gone to another business and we're like, we need Almira. And that's literally what it is that we need some Almira on this because I have this vision for the client and where their communications should be. I call myself a chief marketing communications officer. I don't say marketing because marketing is different from comms and PR, right? But I'm able to see the vision that the CEO or the brand owner might have and be like, here's what you need. This is what you need for visibility or awards, or here's what you're missing. Or oftentimes my clients are in tech and they have incredible marketing directors or marketing teams, but they are usually in their 30s and more digitally savvy, but they won't know about an award or about the brand strategy, all the things that my years of experience, I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years now. And so all the things that I've seen about how to actually build that brand and what the C-suite leader, typically the CEO, loves is that they get to focus on the business. They can literally parachute me in to be the puppeteer and I get what they want. Your gifts in life, clarity and communications are mine. And I've done so much study into human design, which is so much of how things are being generated now at this time in my life, but is literally, they're like, I need somebody who can just deal with this. They know what I want. They've had the experience to do it. And they know the pieces that I need and to oversee it. And literally like, I'm the puppeteer. I can be like, you need this agency because you're going to get X, Y, and Z. Great. Let me do it. Right. And so that's what I'm really known for is that get shit done. That is literally, see, I'm glad you warned me because normally it would be an F-bomb, but it really is about the get shit done. But it's the strategic get shit done in terms of your communications or your PR. And especially now the media environment, I mean, it's funny. We've been saying for the past 25 years, it gets harder and harder every year. It really does get harder and harder every year. But it's about building up their profile, but also having the time and the grit. It's not like the old days where you could call up a reporter, have a relationship in a few weeks and you can get a story. Like you need 6 months to build a brand just to get that first piece in. So how do you actually do that? And again, having that strategic bird's eye view to be able to build that story, to build that brand, to build the visibility and to get it done. That's why my clients call me.
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
Many of your clients are multi-billion-dollar organizations. Are you partnering with other firms to kind of get a seat at the table? Or if not, what are you doing? I mean, for some of these companies, like let's say Nike or whoever it might be, wouldn't they just typically go to a larger firm or some other agency? I'm wondering, how are you getting a seat at that table, and what have you found to work best to land those kind of clients?
Yeah. So the Nikes of the world did come earlier in my work when I was working for another agency, but actually they got that through partnerships. Because at the time, there was a whole thing about West Coast and East Coast. You need a West Coast, East Coast agency. And I do believe that as independent, you want to have those collaborations and those partnerships, because that's also what I got in my business when I had Jive is that who is a Canadian partner, for example, or we had a global wine brand, who's the Canadian agency. And then we opened up a US office and started to grow more business from that perspective. That's especially how the independents can manage to compete in the industry, is by aligning with like-minded businesses. But then as for me, you still get incredible referrals. Mine are very different now. I get referred into cryptocurrency exchanges, for example. I would say my clients now are very much with what's happening in the market. So right now, venture cap and private equity, that's always a busy one, but that's one of my clients. And it's those things that where people are looking to gain more visibility, to be able to grow as a thought leader, or just because they're one of the coolest things and amazing things out there that have a really great brand story. So those are the ones that I'm really cutting my teeth into is that it's less of the billion-dollar brand Nikes of the world, but it's like the cooler things like a cryptocurrency exchange that needs somebody who is nimble and smart and experienced and can hit the ground running. And those are the types of clients calling me now.
When you look over the last several years of your business, have your services changed, like what you're focusing on, what you're offering? And if so, how have they changed?
Yeah. So before it would be, I don't want to say standard PR offerings. It's not standard in the sense that especially the relationships we have with the clients when I was at Jive, we had our retainers for 10 years, which is unheard of. It was so much about the relationships and about doing a great job on PR or nailing the client's influencer relationships. And again, it's really about the vision about what we could build for the client through PR and social media. Now it's very much, I would say, more strategic and more high level in the sense that I work with the CEO, not the marketing director, but really the CEO on the bird's eye brand that we're building. And I get the comms piece out of it. So it is usually an entrepreneurial environment, or it is the president of a company who basically has carte blanche to do whatever they want. I do find that all of my clients are actually men. They want somebody who's going to hit the ground running. And that's partially what it is that just do your thing, do it great. I'm only going to tell you when you've done a bad job, it's such a funny environment I find to work in, where you only ever hear from them if you're doing a bad job. Otherwise, they think you're doing a great job. But yeah, again, it's much more strategic. And of course, I do offer public relations services where we do pitch the media, because that's often how people come to me, is looking for a publicist. But I do so much more than that. It's very comms and PR, a combination there. But they will come to me because they are looking for somebody to be able to oversee, again, the experience level. And then we do very strategic pitching. I would never say that if you wanted to do some mass pitching campaign or something like that, you would come to me. We're very, very strategic. We're very clear about the placements that we do. And of course, we're going to let the media know about you. We would never say, no, we're not going to pitch them. But again, it's very, very clear. There's clear intention behind who we're pitching and what we're trying to work up to.
So the work and the focus has become much more strategic. Has there been any shift or change to your pricing strategy over the years? Like what you're charging, how you're charging now compared to a year or two before?
Yeah. You know what? It's funny how you asked that because actually the pricing would be the same. I charge as much as an agency, I would say, but I charge more for my own time, I would have to say. So that's where the difference is that where before it would be blended billing because I would probably have, like, I would not have as many fingers in the doing of the work.
Right.
So there would be, I don't know, 10 hours of me. Whereas now Almira's prices are higher because there's more of me. The client wants to deal with me. And not to say like I have my own team. I think I've got 5 people on my team, but it's really is that I've increased my own personal prices. And I tend to have a lot more client involvement with the client because that's one thing that I've learned is that when you have a boutique agency, the clients are typically hiring your agency because of you. So how does this work is that if you have to step into things all the time, like it was always often that push pull. They love their account manager, but they wanted me there as well. So now in this incarnation of my business, it is about how do I build all of this amazing support network around me. So now I have very senior people who there's, you know what, I will pay them more to do a media list because they know how to do it better than necessarily a coordinator I have to mentor. But because it's more about me that the clients are hiring, my personal prices are just higher because I've been doing this for such a long time.
Do you have any desire to extract yourself more from the day-to-day kind of delivery work and again, build some sort of an agency or more teams and scale this? Or are you very intentional in keeping it at a small size?
Yeah, I do not want to scale. It's funny because there's the whole thing about like, I think I actually had to do a lot of coaching around this, is that I felt really bad or really weird for charging really high prices just for my own time. Yeah, my coach laughs at me because she's like, you're like this like badass women entrepreneur, but you're afraid to raise your prices. I really had to work on my mindset about it. But no, I don't want to scale with multiple offices. I like the freedom and the flexibility. I love mentoring other people in the industry. Like I look at all of the people in the industry and I'm like, I've trained half of them, but I feel like I've done that part of my life. I want more flexibility in my life and I want to just be able to work with the client one-on-one where needed, work with my team who does a killer job on the comms and the PR and just continue to scale that way. And also with partners. So rather than having specific services within my own business, now I'll bring in search agency. I will bring in a digital marketing agency. These are not services that I ever plan to offer in-house under my brand because I don't want to have to supervise it, right? So I bring in the experts and I work with a number of agencies to do that.
So you mentioned pricing and increasing your fees as an area that you had struggled with, or at least there was some hesitation or pause, and you've got some coaching and support to overcome that. What was the big shift for you? What changed in how you viewed things, or what did you do to be able to overcome that and be able to increase your fees successfully?
Yeah. Not to gender the conversation, but I think there was a lot of it. And I'm very much into personal development. And there's been a lot of talk about how COVID and the world that we're in is bringing up a lot of old stories and subconscious and all the stuff that's just happening. And I think it was actually gender thinking that women value themselves less than a man does in terms of their expertise or what they bring to the world. And I realized I had so many subconscious limiting beliefs. I think because of my gender and because of the color of my skin. It was funny. I was having a conversation with somebody and saying that I don't know if I ever equated myself to perhaps a white woman or a white man in the business world. And it's crazy because look at all the awards that I've won and everything that I've done. But again, subconsciously, I don't think that I believed that I could or that people wanted to pay the high prices for me. Again, it's completely crazy, but that's been a lot of what I've been unpacking. And when I started to look at this weird stuff and was like, it's not true. It's not real. That's when I was just like, I'm letting go of this and I'm owning my expertise or just how much my own knowledge is bringing to the table. And now I'm like, there's no limit, right? But it was funny. It very much came from all like crap, frankly.
Well, I think we all have limiting beliefs in one form or another. So it's great that you're sharing that. You've been working through it. So that's fantastic. Knowing what you know now, Almira, if you were to kind of go back in time, is there anything that you wish that you would have known earlier? Anything that could have maybe got you to that next level of success even faster if you had done things differently?
Yeah. I believe that everything is a learning. So I think that everything was meant to be done as it was done or for it to transpire, I think I'd wish I'd had more knowledge about how to be a better leader or coach. I'm a great leader and I always thought I was really great, but things like I work really fast, which I knew anyways, but that's really, really alienating for people who work for you. And it's very intimidating. I changed my relationship with my team when I started walking slower. You can tell somebody, like if you tell your employees, I always have the time to listen to you. My door is always open, but you are multitasking. You're on the phone, you're walking and talking as you're making coffee and getting all those things done. What you present is not very approachable, frankly. And I think that that was one of my hardest lessons is that you think you're doing something right, but you're not really genuinely thinking about that. And so when I think about the negative feedback that I would have received or about, I don't think things could have changed. I really don't, because you have to learn your lessons. But I think that it would have been nice to have been more aware, right? Having more awareness into our own leadership. I think that's where the difference could have been. And perhaps it didn't need to come with people feeling alienated or unappreciated. And I think that is where I had a lot of coaching on slowing down and listening and things like that. And I think that that was just my biggest lesson.
Can you share with us and kind of talk us through, you mentioned kind of negative feedback that you received maybe from an employee or team member. Can you give an example of what that is? And then now knowing what you know, what have you done to overcome that? Or what's the steps that you took to get things to a better place?
Yeah. People don't feel like I'm actually present with them or I'm actually listening. So, I mean, you might be able to tell I'm a very high energy person. So when I want to coach people, I'm always talking. I'm not like sitting back, listening, having softer listening energy. I know that sounds completely weird as listening energy, but it's about the energetic, the changes that we make so that people feel heard. And also that when people are asking me questions, I listen to respond. That was a really big thing, is that people don't want you to respond. They want to be fully heard. They want to take their time with it. And again, because I'm so high energy, my view of coaching people is to give them all the options for all of the things that they could do. On the receiving end of that, that can come across as bossy. And so,
maybe a bit overwhelming as well.
Yep. And it took me actually talking to another friend of mine who's a guy, funny enough, because I get some female entrepreneurs and bosses who get the same feedback as I do. But talking to a guy who's very high energy and he's just like, I come across as intimidating and overwhelming. But to me, he's the nicest guy on the face of the earth. So I think that was finally like where I clocked it, that it made sense, that I could be very overwhelming, that I could be coming across as very bossy, but also just as like so much energy coming at you. And I actually talked to an energy healer at the time, and she's like, you need to do some energy like planning or work with a plant. And I was like, what? Like, this is crazy. But she was like, just sit in front of a plant. And how do you feel? Do you feel calmer? Like, she basically wanted me to check my own energy and how it was coming across. And it sounds so completely weird. But when I was in front of something that couldn't talk back to me, you realize how there's this flood of energy going at people. And it must be so overwhelming to have that hit you in an environment where you're trying to be mentored and to learn. If this is making any sense whatsoever. Yeah, it was just about this flood coming at you and about when I needed to stop talking to be able to allow people to digest information.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying really brings up for me sometimes it's doing the opposite of what, like the status quo, right? So most people think that in order to accomplish more, you need to go faster. But in some cases, as you're saying right now, you need to go slower so you have the time and you can make the right decisions and plan out how you actually want to go about accomplishing your goals so you can go faster. Or another one is many people think that in order to grow your business, you need to add more products and add more services. And we found time and time again that in most cases, and in fact, looking at most businesses, they tend to subtract or remove things in order for them because complexity doesn't scale. So it's these kinds of lessons which I think are, well, I probably have talked to a plant before as I've watered a plant or something. My stepmother's always talked about how there's energy in plants. So for what you're saying to me, Almira, doesn't sound that out there, but I'm sure for some it would, and I would understand that. But no, I think, just finding, like giving yourself some pause or some time to reflect or to think and to process is really, really powerful. I want to ask you about you and your daily practices. So as you said, you're very high energy, you have your team, you're doing your client work, you have your family. If you were to identify one or two things that you feel really contribute most to your success, to your productivity, to your level of performance, what habit would you say that you have that you're just coming to on a regular basis?
Yeah, doing nothing. And I even say that because maybe a few months ago, I would have said probably meditation. And don't get me wrong, like I absolutely believe, especially for a high energy person like me, meditating and getting grounded. And again, it's so funny how I'm such a high energy person, but I'm also a yoga teacher. So when I teach yoga, people are like, who is this chill person like talking about Mother Earth and connecting to Mother Earth? They're like, we don't recognize you. But actually, even just sitting in quiet, because it even got to the point that meditation became another thing that I did. And there's the difference between doing and being. I just need to be. And especially with all the things that I do throughout the day and like, drop the kids to daycare and to do all of that, you're going. And as an entrepreneur and you're constantly moving. And then you realize you're moving at like breakneck speed. And at the end of the day, you're like, I don't actually know what I did today because I did so much that my brain is still processing. I think that's one of the things that come with age. I tend to talk to a lot of people this, and they're just like, I've spent so much time in hustle mode that hustle has taken over how I do everything. And I'm just like, I love hustle. I think it's great, but I want to go at a slower pace and enjoy, like all of a sudden I'm 25 years into my career and I love it. And I love my life, but I want to sit down a little bit more and be a little bit more intentional with me and with my time and how I think. So I think it's been a bit of a transition and just learning to just sit and do nothing.
What advice would you have to somebody who, here's what you're saying, kind of is looking at the situation saying, yeah, I also want to be able to teach yoga or go to the gym more often or do more exercise, but I feel bad because that's time I'm taking away from working on actually growing my business. And so here I am just working on the business for as many hours as I can every single day. And then I don't have time to do that, the stuff for myself. Like, what would you say to that person in that situation? Because it sounds like, yeah, if you're making time to meditate and to teach yoga and to do all these things, that's time away that you could be in your business. So how would you respond to somebody, or what kind of advice would you offer somebody in that situation?
Boundaries about your time. What are working hours? So 9 to 5. I mean, that's a pretty simple one, but I mean, I get that there's things to do at night or whatever. Get up even just 15 minutes earlier. But honestly, for me, it's outsourcing. And so I ended up having a very heavy workload this past November, December, January. Like it was crazy. So finally, project ended 2 weeks ago and I realized my own personal to-do list was massive. So I just went onto Fiverr and I've actually found an incredible VA because I looked at everything and I said, how is this much work possible? Right? It's not. And I think the old me would have just kept going and doing it and trying to find time in the day, but then I'm not present with my son. And I'm actually very nice to him. I'm like, I snap at him like he's 4. He doesn't deserve that. And when I don't like myself, frankly, it's that simple that when I have too much stuff in my head or like it's not his fault that mom has a busy brain. And so I really needed to check myself and say that this is not okay. And it's funny how I had to do it for somebody else at first and not me. Whereas, why do we not put ourselves first and be like, this is not good for my mental health? Because you know what, I don't like using the word crazy, but a busy brain is not good for our mental health, right? I mean, sometimes it happens. It always happens because we're entrepreneurs, but how do you manage it? But for me, it was just about like outsourcing and saying, I can't do this. And I think that was really hard for me to say that. Not so much that I can't do this, I won't do it. That was hard because I'm a person, honestly, you can do anything. People feel like, if you want somebody to get something done, like get everything done, call Almira. And I think the sense of feeling like accomplishment and productivity is what I was driven by, especially being in PR, right? A PR consultant, like that's just busy. And when I finally said I just don't want to do it anymore. So I outsourced and now I feel like I have manageable control. Yeah.
Awesome. 2 more questions, then we'll wrap up. The last 6 months, best business book, nonfiction book, fiction book that you've read or listened. What would you recommend?
Books I read. I was like, which one do you want to see behind me? You know what? I'm actually reading Jay Shetty's Think Like a Monk. And I would have to say that is really epic. I think he's giving us the pause and the knowledge that we need for the busy world that we are in. And I'm trying to remember, there's been some I've loved to read, but I would have to say Jay is the one that's really stepped. Oh, and then for entrepreneurs, Spencer Shannon, who is my own mentor, but the book is called Entrepreneur Numbers. And it's the numbers that every entrepreneur needs to understand, because let's be realistic. We don't always understand our numbers. It's not our forte. We don't set up our businesses because we're good at numbers, right? And so Spencer's book, Entrepreneur Numbers, is brilliant for every entrepreneur.
Fantastic. All right, we'll have that all linked up in the show notes. Almira, I want to thank you so much for coming on here today. I also want to make sure that people can learn more about you and your work. So where's the best place for people to go to check out everything you have going on?
Yeah. So my website, www.almirabardai.com. The spelling will be in the show notes. It's much easier.
Well, yeah.
You can also check me out on Instagram as well. I do a lot of talking about personal empowerment, women's empowerment. That's all over my Instagram at AlmiraB.
There we go. Almira, thanks again so much for coming on, sharing some of your journey and story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.